A road doesn't fail all at once. It cracks, it gets patched, it gets delayed maintenance. And over time, those small fixes stop being enough. The same thing happens in the water system, in power grids, in transportation networks, and in communication systems. Most of the time, the warning signs are already there. They just don't feel urgent enough to act upon. Welcome to my channel, Not in Kansas Anymore, where we focus on policy over politics. And if you like this kind of nonpartisan, common sense talk, feel free to share, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, there's a PDF of the policy in the description below. The last video was all about what infrastructure actually is and how all of those systems connect together. Now we need to talk about something more uncomfortable. Why does it need to be fixed? Because once you understand how the system works, the next question becomes almost unavoidable. What happens when they stop keeping up with demands? The answer is not usually dramatic at first. It's gradual, it's quiet, it's in the background and almost easy to ignore. What makes infrastructure problems difficult is the deterioration really looks like a crisis at first. It looks like small restrictions, reduced capacity, temporary repairs, longer maintenance schedules, workarounds that keep the system operating for just a little while longer. And because the system is still functioning, it becomes easy to assume that the problem is under control. But functioning and healthy are not always the same thing. A system can continue to operate long after warning signs begin to appear. And that's often what makes infrastructure decline difficult to recognize in real time. A bridge isn't labeled unsafe overnight. It goes through inspections, it gets rated, it gets reduced capacity, and all of this can take place over years. And still, it often stays in use because replacing it is expensive and disruptive. So what you end up with is a system that is technically still functioning, but increasingly fragile. And that brings us to the core issue. Infrastructure doesn't usually fail because we don't know what needs to be done. It fails because doing it is hard to prioritize in real time. There's always another immediate problem, another budget cycle, another political cycle, and other competing demands. So repairs get delayed, upgrades get scaled back, and long-term planning gets pushed into the background. But the system doesn't care about timelines or election cycles. It responds to the physical limits. And when those limits are reached, the cost of fixing things doesn't stay linear. It grows, sometimes sharply. A delay in maintenance today becomes a major reconstruction project tomorrow. A minor upgrade postponed for 5 years or 10 years becomes full replacement project and very expensive. And that's where the idea of cost becomes more complicated, because it's not just about money spent. It's about money avoided and then paid later at a higher price. And that leads to a difficult question. Are we actually saving money by delaying the investment in our infrastructure? Or are we just shifting the cost into a future higher rate? There's also the less visible cost, reliability. When infrastructure becomes less reliable, everything else built on top of it becomes less efficient. Businesses adjust, supply chains slow down, Communities adapt in ways that are not always obvious in the national statistics. And over time, that adds up. Not in one place, but across the entire system. This is why infrastructure is often described as a force multiplier. When it works well, everything else works better. When it doesn't, everything else becomes harder. And that's the real reason this conversation matters. Not because infrastructure is exciting, like healthcare or immigration, but because it quietly determines how well almost everything else functions. In the next video, we'll look at what happens when we move from identifying the problem to actually trying to design solutions for it. And why that part of the conversation is where things get even more complicated. That's where we'll pause for today, and I hope to see you in the next video in 1 week. This is not in Kansas anymore. Goodbye for now.